When the mask cracks, even whispered lies start screaming. My dear chosen ones, remember this. Some people don't destroy you with knives. They do it with stories, because their real battle was never with you, but with the reflection they saw when you walked in the room. Let that sink in before we continue. Welcome, chosen ones. Pull your chair closer, because what we're about to uncover isn't just truth. It's poetic justice wearing steel-toed boots. You didn't come here by accident. You came here because somewhere in life, someone mistook your silence for weakness and your grace for guilt, and now the scoreboard looks nothing like the script they wrote. They forgot one small detail. When someone is genuinely chosen, silence is not surrender, it's strategy. You see, chosen ones, there comes a moment when truth stops tapping politely and starts kicking doors off the hinges. Lies are like temporary tattoos. They look bold at first, but fade faster than expected, especially when regret becomes the detergent. And now, the same people who painted you as the villain are choking on the very lines they rehearsed. They stare at ceilings instead of sleeping. They overthink instead of enjoying life. They panic at silence because silence now sounds like evidence. They once walked around with the confidence of someone who believed their performance had no encore. They thought they had outsmarted life, outtalked reality, and outrun consequences. They told themselves that no one would ever question their version because no one asked for yours. But my dear chosen ones, truth is undefeated, even when benched. And now, that truth they buried like an unwanted memory is resurfacing like a forgotten file that suddenly pops back up on the desktop with no option to delete. Let's answer what might be swirling in your mind right now. Why me? Why was I the one they chose to twist, target, or betray? The answer is simpler than it feels. Chosen ones. People rarely attack what is weak. They attack what is threatening. They don't gossip about those beneath them. They gossip about those who make them feel exposed without saying a word. Your existence revealed their insecurities before you ever opened your mouth. That's why they felt the need to create an alternate version of you. Fiction is easier to compete with than authenticity. Think about it metaphorically. When a house is unstable, the owner blames the storm instead of the foundation. When a mirror shows imperfections, some people break the mirror instead of fixing themselves. You were never the storm, you were the mirror. Before we move forward, chosen ones, if this message is resonating with your soul, your story, or your silent strength, take a moment to support this movement. Hit that like button, because every like pushes this truth to someone who desperately needs it. And make sure you subscribe so we can continue bringing you powerful, life-shifting, mind-awakening content that reminds you who you really are. Your support isn't just numbers. It fuels the mission, strengthens the message, and helps us keep creating content that heals, empowers, and awakens the chosen ones worldwide. Stay with us. Your journey deserves this level of truth. Chosen ones, understand this. You didn't lose when they lied. They lost when they feared your truth. They weren't terrified that someone would hear your story. They were terrified that someone would believe it. That is why they rushed to speak first. That is why they exaggerated, dramatized, and performed. They knew if they didn't paint you fast enough, reality would give you the spotlight they thought they stole. But here's the twist life loves. Fake stories age like spoiled milk, while authentic souls age like vintage art. Now, every room they enter feels different. Every conversation feels risky. Every silence feels suspicious. Their heartbeat has turned into a courtroom, and every breath feels like cross-examination. They aren't suffering because you exposed them. You didn't have to. They're suffering because their own mind is now the detective, the witness, the jury, and the sentence. Chosen ones, I want you to hold your head high because there is power in being someone others felt compelled to lie about. It means your truth was too strong to handle face to face. You were never difficult to understand. You were just inconvenient to blame. And now here we are, at the part they never prepared for. The return of truth without you uttering a word. Their circle, once their audience, is now a panel of silent observers. People are connecting dots. Energy isn't matching dialogue. Their story no longer fits like it used to because guilt doesn't know how to stay hidden. It always leaks through tone, timing, facial expression, and nervous explanations no one asked for. So buckle up, chosen ones, because we're not here to whisper. We're here to dissect the silent collapse they never saw coming, the psychological earthquake they triggered themselves, and the reason your silence turned out to be louder than their entire performance. This is not revenge. This is revelation. And revelation hits harder when the truth walks in wearing calmness as a crown. Chosen ones, if this message is hitting the very places you were never allowed to speak from, don't just sit silently in the shadows. Stay connected to the only space that speaks your truth without filters. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know you're here by dropping "I'm still rising" in the comments. Your support is what keeps this kind of raw, unfiltered, soul-level truth alive. When you engage, you're not just watching. You're building a community of voices that were never heard but can no longer be ignored. Stay right here, because now we go even deeper, and the next part will feel like reading your own diary aloud. Number 1, the lies they told about you were really mirrors they couldn't look into. They tried to rewrite your character because they couldn't survive their own story. Some people don't hate you, chosen one. They hate that you remind them of the truth they keep running from. My dear chosen ones, let's speak this part with clarity, not confusion. They never built lies about you because you were weak, wrong, or suspicious. They did it because your existence was too honest, too real, too raw for the identity they were trying to sell to others. They needed a distraction, not a villain, a cover-up, not a confession, a storyline, not accountability. And you, chosen one, became the safest character to frame because you weren't the type to clap back with chaos, scream for validation, or beg for a voice they assumed silence meant defeat, when in reality, silence was your spine of steel. You might wonder, why me? Why did they choose my name, my image, my character to twist? Because, chosen one, liars are terrified of eyewitnesses, especially the kind who don't need to talk to prove they were right. You were never a threat because of what you did. You were a threat because of who you are. You carry a presence that exposes insecurity, even without opening your mouth. People who don't want to face themselves begin scanning the room for someone they can dump their emotional trash on. And unfortunately, the cleanest soul is always targeted as the landfill. Imagine this, someone standing in front of a mirror covered in dirt. Instead of cleaning the mirror, they point at it and say, "Look how filthy it is." That was them. You weren't the dirt. You were the reflection. They didn't want to wipe the mirror. They wanted to break it. That's how terrified some people are of self-awareness. They didn't just lie about you, chosen one. They used your identity as a stage prop in their performance of denial. They wrote scripts where they played the misunderstood hero and you played the monster. Not because it was true, but because it was convenient. They weaponized words like daggers dipped in honey, and the audience believed it at first. Why? Because negativity spreads faster than truth, and people love a dramatic villain more than a silent, steady human being. They needed you to look flawed so they could look flawless. They needed to point fingers so no one would look at their hands. They needed you to be misunderstood so they could be comforted. In their world, accountability isn't medicine, it's poison. But here's the plot twist they never saw coming. When someone lies about you, they aren't revealing your character, they're revealing their capacity. Every rumor they whispered was really a confession disguised as a warning label. Every exaggerated detail was a diary entry they accidentally published. Every time they described you in a distorted way, they were actually describing their unhealed version of themselves. They weren't trying to protect people from you. They were trying to protect themselves from exposure. And, chosen ones, here's where it gets beautifully ironic. Maintaining a lie requires energy, memory, consistency, and emotional stamina. But pretending to be something you're not is exhausting, especially when the truth sits in the background like a time bomb with no off switch. They are not suffering today because you spoke. They are suffering because their own story is starting to choke them. The lie they built was their shelter, but now it's their prison. People around them are beginning to notice patterns, the recycled bitterness, the rehearsed tones, the way they bring up your name even when you're not around. Genuine people don't obsess, chosen one. Guilty people do. And there's nothing heavier to carry than a version of yourself you can't live up to. You didn't lose when they lied. They lost when they couldn't live without one. You didn't fail because they misunderstood you. They failed because they understood you too well and panicked. Your silence didn't make you weak. Their storytelling made them exposed. The most painful part for them now isn't that you know the truth. It's that other people are beginning to sense it too. The audience they once entertained is now replaying scenes in their mind and realizing the plot doesn't add up. Real character eventually leaks through tone, posture, energy, and results. And chosen one, you have all three. Let them keep trying to defend the lie. It only digs the grave deeper. When someone builds their identity on fiction, they eventually forget what part of themselves was ever real. And when the mask becomes heavier than the face beneath it, exposure is not a matter of if, it becomes a matter of when. Number 2, guilt doesn't fade. It ferments and turns into silent inner poison. Their guilt didn't fade, it fermented, and now it's leaking through their energy like silent poison. You can lie with your mouth, chosen one, but energy always testifies. My dear chosen ones, listen closely. Guilt is never just a feeling that fades with time. It's a silent infestation that slowly contaminates the mind, body, and energy of the person who birthed it. When they lied about you, they didn't just create a false story. They created a psychological parasite that now feeds on their inner peace. They thought guilt was a moment, but guilt became their environment. And while they believed the truth died when they buried it, they failed to realize lies don't bury truth. They bury the liar alive with it. This is what many don't understand. Guilt is not emotional dust that can be swept under a mental rug. It behaves like rot, spreading quietly, slowly, and invisibly. It starts in the mind, then seeps into behavior, then poisons body language, then leaks into their aura. The chosen ones, people like you, can sense it instantly, even without a word spoken. You've seen it, haven't you? The shift, the stiffness, the forced normalcy, the laughter that sounds like an echo instead of joy. That is not coincidence. That is emotional corrosion dressed in social camouflage. They try to walk like they used to, talk like they used to, joke like they used to, but guilt has rewired their entire nervous system. Their shoulders stay tense, even in silence. Their eyes scan rooms, even when no one is questioning them. Their sleep no longer restores, it confronts. Chosen ones, you must understand, speech can be rehearsed, but energy can't be edited. And guilt is the only emotion that haunts even when the lights are on. Every time they repeated their lie about you, every time they exaggerated a detail to make their story believable, every time they sought sympathy at your expense, they weren't just hurting you, they were spiritually overdosing on their own deception. The applause they got didn't soothe them, it stamped the lie deeper. Approval didn't free them, it chained them tighter. Because when the truth lives inside, but the story outside is different, the mind becomes a psychological battlefield that never sleeps. Think about this, chosen one. If someone throws a lie into the world, they become responsible for tending to it. Lies are high-maintenance pets. They demand attention, they require consistency, they feed on validation, and they starve without constant upkeep. A liar must remember every detail, every timeline, every version, every audience, and every performance. Meanwhile, the truth requires zero rehearsal from you. That alone is your victory. And the price they pay? Not public humiliation. That would almost be easier. No, their punishment is internal. Where no applause and no disguise can reach, guilt manifests not as tears, but as tension. Not as regretful apologies, but as restless minds. Not as breakdowns, but as slow psychological decay. They wake up tired because their mind was on trial all night. They smile, but their jaw tightens. They talk, but their conscience whispers. They pretend to live, but they internally negotiate a story they no longer believe. Chosen ones, you didn't have to expose them. Their own energy is doing the work for you. People can feel the difference between authenticity and acting. They can sense the mismatch between their voice and their vibration. Even those who once believed them are now questioning, not because you proved anything, but because their energy no longer aligns with their claims. The contrast between you and them is now louder than any confrontation. You walk with quiet clarity. They walk with hidden discomfort. You move with peace. They move with pressure. You don't think about them. They can't stop thinking about you. That is the silent justice they never expected. What terrifies them the most now isn't that others may eventually find out. It's that you never needed revenge to win. That realization is their internal earthquake. They expected you to crumble, defend, retaliate, or chase validation. Instead, you evolved. And nothing burns a guilty person more than seeing the one they tried to break become mentally stronger, emotionally calmer, and energetically untouchable. They might continue pretending nothing is wrong, but guilt does not negotiate identity. It reconstructs it. It stains memory, warps perception, and corrodes confidence. They can smile, pose, socialize, and entertain. But guilt sits beside them like a shadow with no exit strategy. Chosen one, understand this truth. When someone tries to destroy you with lies, the universe doesn't punish them with thunder. It punishes them with themselves, and that is a sentence no one escapes. Number 3. The same crowd who once cheered them is now watching every crack form. The spotlight they borrowed is now burning holes through their mask. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about one of the most poetic twists in this entire saga. The moment when the very audience that once clapped for their performance begins to squint, analyze, doubt, and quietly take mental notes. At first, they believed they had the world wrapped around their finger like a puppet string. They basked in the applause, the fake sympathy, the nods of agreement, the whispered conversations where people swallowed their lies without chewing. For a while, they felt unstoppable, like they had mastered perception and owned the narrative. They walked with an inflated confidence, convinced their illusion was flawless. But illusions always come with an expiration date. And chosen ones, that date has just arrived. Now the shift has begun, subtle but powerful, like a change in the wind before a storm. The very people who once believed every falsely painted detail about you are now watching them instead. Their once trusted supporters, friends, co-workers, relatives, even acquaintances, are beginning to notice tiny cracks that were always there but never examined. The inconsistencies in their stories, the exaggerated emotional reactions, the unnecessary commentary, the patterns of blame that never seem to involve themselves. Suddenly, it's standing out like graffiti on white walls. They know it. They can feel the room's energy changing, even if no one is saying a word. They feel eyes on them, not with admiration, but with evaluation. The same smiles that once reassured them now carry hidden curiosity. Every sentence they speak is weighed, every gesture is noted, every expression is analyzed. They are no longer performing for applause. They are being watched like someone trying to smuggle truth under their tongue. And chosen one, nothing in this world feels heavier than the weight of observation when you're carrying guilt under your skin. It's ironic, isn't it? They spent so long observing you like a science project, waiting for your reaction, monitoring your silence, whispering about what you might do next. But now the microscope has flipped, and they are the specimen on the slide. They once studied you to gather ammunition. Now people are studying them to detect lies. The power dynamic they abused has reversed, without you lifting a finger. And here's what makes the pressure unbearable. When someone lives in truth, every action aligns naturally. But when someone lives in a lie, every action feels choreographed, forced, and monitored. They're suddenly hyper-aware of their tone, their behavior, their wording, their body language, but guilt makes actors sloppy. They try to maintain calm, but their voice shakes. They try to appear genuine, but overact. They try to sound confident, but overshare. They try to stay in control, but react too quickly. The more they try to look unaffected, the more their discomfort exposes itself. They now understand that lies don't simply require memory, they require performance stamina. And chosen ones, performance is tiring when the audience starts paying attention to the script instead of the costume. They once believed that as long as people liked them, the lie would live forever. But now, people are beginning to see a mismatch, a difference between the story told and the energy shown. People may not confront them out loud yet, but silent doubt is far more dangerous than public accusation. Doubt spreads like quiet fire, first warming the background, then dissecting everything in hindsight until the entire narrative is re-evaluated without a single spoken debate. Now they walk through rooms with invisible mirrors reflecting every unfinished truth back at them. They feel the tension, the suspicion, the unspoken question floating through the air. If what you said was true, why doesn't your energy match it anymore? The silence that once protected them now feels like an interrogation chamber. They wanted control, now they have surveillance. They wanted attention, now they have suspicion. They wanted applause, now they have analysis. Meanwhile, chosen one, your calmness is the contrast that exposes their chaos. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to speak or explain. Every peaceful breath you take is a reminder that the story they built is missing something major, your truth. And the moment people realize there is a missing piece, they start looking at the storyteller instead of the subject. They once believed no one would ever see through them. Now they're terrified someone might already have. That's the price of building a lie. It doesn't collapse loudly. It disintegrates under observation. Number 4, they didn't just fabricate stories. They built their entire identity on fiction. They didn't just lie about you. They became the lie they created. My dear chosen ones, this part right here is one of the coldest truths you'll ever realize about the people who tried to assassinate your character. They didn't just lie about you, they became the lie. They didn't just twist a moment, they built a personality. They didn't just bend the truth, they built an entire identity on the ruins of your name. What started as a small, petty, desperate attempt to make you look flawed eventually became the blueprint of who they presented themselves as in the world. They didn't understand that a lie is not a tool. It's wet cement. And once they stepped into it, they froze in place, unable to move forward without breaking the mold they created. You see, Chosen ones, some people don't spread rumors because they hate you. They do it because it's easier than admitting they failed themselves. They needed a narrative that made them look like the survivor, the hero, the misunderstood soul, while quietly painting you as the danger, the threat, the problem. They told the story so many times that it became muscle memory, a rehearsed speech, a script they performed like a theater role. They wore that lie like a uniform, convinced it made them look righteous, respectable, and innocent. But in reality, it made them look like a character in a play they were afraid to end. They didn't realize how dangerous it is to use a lie as a life jacket. Eventually, it becomes a weight that drags the person under. At first, they enjoyed the sympathy like warm applause. They loved the attention because it filled the emptiness they didn't know how to heal. Every nod, every shocked gasp, every "I didn't know that about them" fueled them like a hidden addiction. They didn't realize validation built from deception is not love, it's dependency. And the worst form of dependency is needing pity to feel powerful. Chosen ones, pay close attention. People who create false narratives eventually become prisoners of their own storyline. They start living cautiously, nervously, overthinking every step, because anyone who knows the real truth becomes a threat. That's why they can't relax around you, why your name makes them tense, why your silence feels like a weapon. When a lie becomes someone's identity, every conversation feels like a minefield. They speak fast. They over-explain. They justify things nobody asked about. They mention you even when the topic has nothing to do with you. That's not protection of reputation. That's fear of exposure. And here's the part that cuts them the deepest. They could have chosen honesty. They could have sat with their insecurities, owned their mistakes, grown from their flaws, and evolved into better humans. But instead, they stitched together a costume called the innocent one and wore it like royalty. They built an entire image not on growth, but on comparison, competition, and distortion. They didn't care about becoming better, they only cared about looking better. The real tragedy is not what they did to you, chosen one. The real tragedy is what they did to themselves. When someone decides that pretending is easier than healing, they don't lose relationships, they lose themselves. Now they're trapped. Because once a lie becomes your personality, telling the truth feels like death. To admit the truth now would require them to publicly remove their mask, take accountability, and confess that everything they built was nothing but a performance. And pride. Oh, pride is a ruthless warden. Pride would rather let them emotionally suffocate than let them surrender the illusion. The guilt they carry now isn't simply guilt for lying about you. It's guilt for becoming the lie. They didn't stain your name, chosen one, they stained their own character. They didn't break your reputation, they cracked their identity. They didn't sabotage your life. They disconnected from reality, because when a lie becomes a lifestyle, a person doesn't just lose trust. They lose themselves piece by piece until the mask feels more real than their true reflection. And that, chosen ones, is a loss no apology could ever repair. Number 5. Every word they spoke became the evidence they thought would never surface. They talked themselves into exposure while thinking they were building your downfall. Chosen ones, pay very close attention to this part, because it explains why your silence didn't ruin you, it rescued you. See, when people lied about you, twisted your image, exaggerated your flaws, or turned your name into a storyline for entertainment, your first instinct was probably to defend yourself, confront them, clear the air, or prove your innocence. That's natural. Every human being wants to correct a false narrative, but chosen ones, the real power move wasn't speaking, it was waiting. Not because you didn't have the words, but because your truth didn't need a microphone to survive. Their lies needed oxygen. Your truth simply needed time. While they were busy running their mouths, they didn't realize something crucial. Every sentence they spoke was building their own profile, not yours. They believed they were constructing a cage for you, but they were actually constructing a case against themselves. Slowly, confidently, and publicly. They mistook your quiet for defeat, but silence is often the most sophisticated form of self-defense. Chosen ones don't rush to correct a rumor. They allow it to age like spoiled milk until it exposes its own stench. People with malicious intentions always reveal themselves through their words because lies require stamina, memory, and performance. Truth stands still. Lies must constantly run. While they spoke, others quietly observed patterns, the unnecessary details, the emotional intensity, the repetitive attacks, the defensive tones, and the suspicious timing. It wasn't your silence that looked suspicious. It was their obsession with keeping the story alive. The beauty of being a chosen one is that you don't need to expose anyone. They eventually expose themselves. Every accusation, every whisper, every dramatic retelling was them unknowingly submitting evidence against their own character. They showcased their jealousy through tone, their insecurity through exaggeration, and their bitterness through repetition. They thought their words were arrows pointed at your reputation, not realizing those same arrows were circling back like boomerangs with perfect aim. And chosen ones, here's a psychological truth they never studied. People reveal more about their inner selves when they talk about others than when they talk about themselves. That's why your silence was never a mistake. It was a mirror. While you were healing, evolving, leveling up, and staying true to your own path, they were busy rehearsing stories that began sounding less like truth and more like confessionals. Rumors can spark attention, yes, but truth builds recognition. And eventually, people began comparing the two. They saw your calm versus their desperation, your progress versus their narrative, your evolution versus their fixation. When a chosen one continues to rise without addressing lies, the lies collapse out of pure contrast. Soon, the very conversations they used to poison others became uncomfortable for them to revisit. Why? Because once facts and outcomes shift, old lies turn into evidence of insecurity. The very words they once used as weapons became fingerprints, and the people who once nodded along quietly began asking themselves, if everything they said was true, then why is the chosen one thriving, peaceful, and unbothered? That's when panic begins. They start trying to clarify, adjust their story, add disclaimers, blame misunderstanding, or pretend they never said it that way. They realize too late that the loudest person in the room isn't the most honest, just the most afraid. Chosen ones understand this. Every whisper was documented, not by luck, not by karma, not by fate, but by their own inability to stay silent. Every lie was like signing their name on a report they didn't know existed. Every retelling added another layer to their own exposure. You didn't trap them. They trapped themselves. While they believed they were winning through influence, they were actually unraveling through inconsistency. And the final poetic twist. The story that was meant to destroy you became the biography that reveals them. So chosen ones, remember this forever. Sometimes the best rebuttal is silence, because truth doesn't need a witness. It needs a contrast. And now, the contrast is impossible to ignore. Number 6. They mistook your quiet strength for surrender, not strategy. They thought your silence buried the truth, not knowing it was quietly sharpening it. Chosen one, let's get real about this part. They genuinely believed that your silence confirmed their storyline. In their mind, silence meant guilt, defeat, embarrassment, or lack of defense. They mistook quiet for powerless, stillness for surrender, and distance for damage. They were so sure you had no comeback that they celebrated prematurely, like someone popping champagne at halftime without checking the scoreboard. They didn't know that silence, when chosen by the right soul, is not an exit. It's evolution happening behind a closed door. They assumed you stayed quiet because you had no proof, no explanation, no voice, or no supporters. But the truth was far deeper than anything they could comprehend. You weren't quiet because you were weak. You were quiet because you were processing, understanding, observing, healing, and transforming. You weren't quiet to avoid confrontation. You were quiet to avoid contamination. There is a massive difference. Silence, chosen one, is one of the most underestimated forms of strength in the modern world. When everyone else is talking, shouting, explaining, justifying, and defending, the rare ones who go silent are the ones gaining clarity. Silence isn't for the defeated. It is for those who value inner truth over outside noise. And while they assumed you were broken, you were actually building. While they assumed they silenced you, you were strategizing. While they assumed you were hiding, you were healing. Let's answer the thought you may have had at your lowest point. Why didn't I defend myself? Why couldn't I speak when I was being misrepresented? Because, chosen one, when truth is on your side, speaking becomes optional. When something is real, you don't rush to protect it. You allow time to reveal it. Silence is the highest form of emotional intelligence because it understands that arguments don't change minds. Life does. And while they ran around trying to convince everyone of their version, you were quietly preparing to become living evidence. They were focused on temporary perception. You were focused on permanent transformation. They wanted fast validation. You were building long-term elevation. They performed publicly. You evolved privately. They traded truth for attention. You traded reaction for peace. And here's where it gets poetic. The same silence they mocked ended up being the silence that exposed them. Why? Because when someone lies, the only thing holding the lie together is constant maintenance. Lies require storytelling, tone control, consistency, and repeated reinforcement. The moment their energy changed, the mask cracked. Meanwhile, truth doesn't require repetition. It only requires time. Your silence acted like a mirror, chosen one. It didn't yell, it reflected. And slowly, people around them started connecting details, noticing inconsistencies, sensing discomfort, and feeling the misalignment. Silence didn't defend you, it revealed them. That's the plot twist they never prepared for. You didn't need to speak for people to see the truth. The truth needed them to speak long enough to expose themselves. While they were obsessed with the crowd, you were invested in your growth. While they were rehearsing, you were recovering. While they were scrambling for supporters, you were building stability. That type of silence becomes a threat because it holds power they can't predict and moves in ways they can't control. And now, chosen one, look at how beautifully it turned out. You didn't just outlast the lie, you outgrew it. The people who once believed them are now questioning everything. Those who assumed you were defeated are now shocked at how much strength you've gained. The ones who expected you to fall apart are now watching you rise higher than the version of you they tried to replace with rumors. Nothing destroys a false accusation faster than a life that contradicts it. They are angry now, not because you exposed them, but because you didn't need to. Your silence became your resume. Your growth became your courtroom. Your stability became your witness. Your transformation became your evidence. Your peace became your closing statement. And the final verdict didn't need to be spoken. It was seen. So, chosen one, never regret your silence. It wasn't empty. It was productive. It wasn't avoidance. It was alignment. It wasn't fear. It was wisdom. You didn't stay quiet because you had no voice. You stayed quiet because you were building a version of yourself that no lie could compete with. They thought silence meant you were done. In reality, it meant you had just begun. Number 7. Every silent victory you earn turns their narrative into ash. Every time you rise without explaining, their guilt adds another layer they can't peel off. My dear chosen ones, listen closely. Nothing in this world torments a liar more than watching the person they tried to destroy evolve into someone even stronger, wiser, calmer, and more untouchable than before. Their guilt doesn't just grow, it multiplies, because nothing exposes falsehood faster than undeniable results. They never expected you to rise. In fact, they expected the opposite. They expected you to break quietly, fade silently, and settle permanently into the shadows they tried to place you in. They believed their version of you would become your reality. Instead, you became the very proof that silence is not defeat. Silence is preparation, and now, chosen one, your glow is their punishment. They counted on your silence to be a grave, not realizing it was a greenhouse. They were convinced that if they could damage your name long enough, eventually you would disappear into the fog of self-doubt. They assumed you would spend years defending yourself, correcting rumors, chasing approval, or trying to convince people who were committed to misunderstanding you, but you flipped the script. You chose elevation over explanation, and that was the move they never saw coming. While they were busy scripting your downfall, you were quietly drafting your comeback. And oh, chosen one, nothing shakes a storyteller like a living contradiction. Your wins hit them harder because they require no announcement. You didn't post your tears, but you posted your progression. You didn't publicize your breakdowns, but you publicized your breakthroughs. You didn't chase applause, yet applause found you anyway. Every achievement you've collected, whether emotional, financial, spiritual, mental, physical, or social, is a mirror they cannot stand to look into. It reflects every exaggeration, every lie, every rumor, every manipulation they use to keep others misinformed. Your existence is now a silent press release that rewrites every narrative they tried to tattoo on your name. Chosen one, let's be honest, they never feared you failing, they feared you succeeding. Failure would have validated their story. Success exposed their intention. They wanted sympathy for themselves, not truth for you. They wanted pity from others, not accountability for themselves. But life has an interesting way of honoring authenticity. It rewards what is real and corrodes what is artificial. Now every time you elevate, their stomach tightens, their thoughts race, and their emotions spiral. Not because you did something to them, but because they did something to you, and it didn't work. What stings them the most is not your success. It's your silence during your success. They were prepared to argue if you fought back. They were prepared to twist your words if you tried to defend yourself. They were prepared to play victim if you confronted them publicly. But they were never prepared for you to grow without them, surpass without them, mature beyond them, and outlive every rumor without offering a single line of explanation. That type of elevation can't be debated. It can only be witnessed. And now, every room you walk into exposes them. Not through anything you say, but through everything you are. Your peace irritates their guilt. Your confidence highlights their insecurity. Your alignment intensifies their chaos. Your progress turns their words into ashes. Your glow forces their shadows forward. They can no longer hide behind the story they built, because you are living proof that the story was fiction. Chosen one, understand this deeply. Your wins are not just wins. They are receipts. They are clarity. They are justice delivered quietly. And the most brutal part? You didn't need revenge. You didn't need confrontation. You didn't need a public explanation. You didn't even need closure. Life gave you results instead, and results cannot be argued. They no longer feel guilty simply because they lied. They feel guilty because the lie failed. They no longer panic because of what they said. They panic because people are starting to see what they didn't say, and they no longer fear the truth coming out. They fear people realizing they never needed to ask your side to see it. This is why their guilt keeps expanding, not because you won, but because you won silently, gracefully, and undeniably. You didn't ruin their image. Your success revealed it. And now, chosen one, every breath you take in peace is a chapter that rewrites your story and erases theirs. Number 8. The story was never your downfall. It was their self-exposure in slow motion. They tried to script your downfall, but accidentally filmed their own documentary. Chosen one, here's where the irony hits like a lightning strike. They're finally realizing that the entire story they crafted wasn't designed to destroy you. It was silently building the stage that would reveal them. They thought they were narrating your ending, but they were unintentionally narrating their own character arc, one that exposes their insecurities, intentions, and emotional immaturity. While they were trying to make you look untrustworthy, unstable, dramatic, or difficult, they didn't realize every word they spread was actually a self-portrait they painted in front of an audience that's now paying close attention. It never crossed their mind that the story they told about you might eventually become the mirror they'd be forced to stare into, with nowhere left to run and no costume left to wear. My dear chosen ones, this is where the plot twist becomes undeniable. They invested so much energy in painting you as the villain that they didn't notice the paint dripping onto their own hands. They didn't realize that when someone repeatedly talks about another person's flaws, mistakes, or personality, people eventually stop listening to what they're saying and start asking, "Why are you so obsessed?" They thought they were clever, controlling how others viewed you, but all they really did was expose their emotional instability, their jealousy, and their inability to self-reflect. What they wanted others to think about you is now becoming the exact suspicion people are having about them, and it is driving them into a silent panic. Chosen ones, listen closely. They're not shocked that people are questioning them. They're shocked that no one is defending them anymore. The very same circle they once used as an audience is now slowly stepping back, side-eyeing, and watching their words like a suspicious transaction. Because when someone talks too much about another person, especially when the target stays silent and grows, the conversation eventually turns into evidence, not influence. And now, instead of people nodding in agreement, they're silently analyzing. Instead of clapping at their stories, they're mentally connecting dots. Instead of assuming you were the problem, they're wondering why this person needed a narrative in the first place. This is the moment, chosen one, when the spotlight they use to expose you rotates and shines directly on them. And they can't handle the heat they're sweating inside their own performance while trying to smile like nothing is wrong. They assumed their audience would never notice the contradictions, tone changes, exaggerated emotions, or recycled accusations, but people aren't blind. They're observant. Patterns speak louder than explanations, and their pattern is now screaming. They don't even realize that every time they try to reinforce the same story, their voice loses impact, their emotion loses authenticity, and their credibility loses stamina. What once sounded like truth is now sounding like desperation. The most uncomfortable part for them is understanding that you, chosen one, never had to expose them. Time and behavior are exposing them without your participation. Their own actions are the documentary, their own tone is the narrator, and their own decisions are the subtitles. You don't have to announce anything, defend anything, or correct anything. Your evolution already did that. When someone lies, they need repetition. When someone tells the truth, evidence does the talking. And right now, your progress, calmness, dignity, and emotional stability are speaking louder than their entire storyline ever did. Chosen ones, Think about how poetic this is. They wrote the script hoping people would laugh at you, distance themselves from you, or question your reality. Instead, the audience is now questioning their intentions, their motives, and their emotional health. They're being viewed as the person who talks too much, blames too loudly, explains too often, and seeks validation too desperately. That's the difference between someone who heals and someone who hides. Healed people move forward, but insecure people need an enemy to feel relevant. And now, the consequences aren't dramatic. They're psychological. They're not crying because they hurt you. They're crumbling because they expose themselves. They're not terrified of the truth coming out. They're terrified that people are already sensing it. They're trapped in the exact storyline they designed for you, except now the ending reveals their true identity, not yours. They didn't create your destruction, chosen one. They created their own biography, and life is making them watch it in slow motion. Number 9. Their audience isn't blind anymore. The timeline no longer matches their tale. When the mask starts slipping, even their supporters start squinting. Chosen ones, this is the part that hits harder than any clapback ever could. Not because you exposed them, but because time did. Time is the silent investigator that doesn't need gossip, confrontation, screenshots, or dramatic speeches. It simply waits, watches, and then reveals. The same people who once stood behind them, applauded their version, and believed their narrative are now quietly realizing something never added up. Lies are flashy, dramatic, and thrilling, like fireworks. But fireworks don't last. They burn out, leaving nothing but smoke and silence. Truth, on the other hand, might arrive slow, but it arrives undeniable. In the beginning, chosen one, when they spoke against you, they sounded convincing, emotional, detailed, maybe even theatrical. You didn't defend yourself, not because you were guilty, but because you valued your inner peace more than public debate. You knew that responding out of urgency would make you look defensive, not truthful. And because silence isn't entertaining, many assumed it meant guilt. People love drama, not clarity, until clarity slaps them in silence. But here's what they never anticipated. You stayed consistent. Your character didn't tremble, your behavior didn't shift, your spirit didn't get bitter, and your life didn't spiral the way their story suggested it should. While they were narrating chaos, you were living proof of calm. While they were rewriting scenes, you were building a new chapter. While they were busy trying to destroy your name, you were busy upgrading your life, and that became the loudest contradiction of all. Now, chosen one, those same people who once believed every exaggerated sentence are starting to observe with a sharper lens. They're noticing how your accusers can no longer keep the story stable. The details keep changing, the tone has shifted, the confidence has cracked, and their once loud opinions now sound like hesitant explanations. People are sensing that the way they speak about you doesn't match the way you carry yourself. And that, chosen one, is where doubt enters doubt, is the first step of exposure. Always. You see, real character leaves fingerprints on energy, decisions, and relationships. Your evolution, your growth, your emotional maturity, your peace, all of that became evidence without you saying a single word. Their story depended on making you look broken. But you didn't walk around broken. You didn't shrink, collapse, or become what they predicted. Instead, you glowed harder, healed deeper, upgraded quieter, and that confused everyone who believed you were supposed to fall apart. People have started questioning, if the story was true, why does the chosen one look unbothered? Why aren't they bitter? Why aren't they messy? Why does their life seem to be leveling up instead of falling apart? Questions are dangerous to a liar. One question can dismantle an entire illusion. Meanwhile, the ones who pointed fingers can no longer maintain the performance. Their tone is nervous instead of confident. Their explanations sound like rehearsals instead of truth. And their eyes dart around the room when you're mentioned because suddenly talking about you feels unsafe instead of empowering. They used to sound like narrators. Now they sound like defendants. And chosen one, here's the most poetic part. You didn't need to expose them. They exposed themselves. They did it through inconsistency, through emotional instability, through unnecessary explanations, through the same recycled bitterness that no longer sounds justified. And people notice that. Maybe they don't say it out loud, but silent observations are stacking up like receipts. This is what we call quiet justice. No slamming doors, no dramatic confrontations, no "I told you so," no public battles, just truth rising and lies rotting. You never had to prove who you were. You never needed witnesses. You never needed a defense attorney. All you needed was to stay true to who you are while time handled what your voice didn't need to. Chosen ones, let this part strengthen your confidence forever. Truth never rushes because truth doesn't fear time. Lies do. Truth ages like fine wine. Lies spoil like rotten fruit. And now, without you saying a single word, the contradictions are speaking louder than any explanation ever could. Stay calm, stay aligned, stay authentic. Time is still working. And now, chosen one, as we reach the end of this truth-filled breakdown, let this be your reminder. You never needed to correct their lies. Life corrected them for you. Your consistency became evidence, your peace became proof, and time became your silent witness. So if you felt this message in your spirit, if it spoke directly to your hidden chapters, don't leave quietly. Show you're part of the chosen collective. Like this video, subscribe for more powerful revelations. Drop 77 in the comments to mark your awakening and share this with someone who needs their truth revived.